Dixie Ambulance would call Captain Arnold Butcher.
Some water.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Get some water.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Captain, would you please state your name for the record?
It's Arnold Butcher.
And what is your current employment?
I am a captain with the Davis County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been with the Davis County Sheriff's Office?
For 23 years, almost 24. Or, no, 23 years.
How long, or what's your current title there?
I'm captain, division commanders, kind of referred to.
And how long have you held that position?
Since January of 2012.
Have you ever testified at a trial or a hearing like this before?
I've testified a lot in trials, the law enforcement side, maybe once or twice at civil hearings.
And are you currently being paid to be here?
Yes, sir.
And what is the pay arrangement that you have with Dixie Ambulance?
They gave me compensation for my room, my wages for the day, and my travel expenses for the gas mileage and that to come down here.
Now, if we could, what are your responsibilities at in Davis County?
I'm division commander over the patrol division, which also encompasses our paramedic program. And so I oversee that whole division. Has many other aspects along with the paramedic program too.
What is your paramedic program?
Our paramedic program, it's run through, obviously through the Sheriff's Office. We run 4 paramedic rescues where we provide service primarily throughout all of Davis County. There are 2 other licensed paramedic agencies in Davis County. We backfill for them if necessary and cover the remaining parts of the Davis County.
Now, for us folks from St. George,
Yes.
could you tell us about Davis County, how big it is, where it is?
Okay, Davis County is just north.
I can tell you that. Just joking.
Davis County is just north of Salt Lake. I wish I could give you the exact, dimensions and everything like that. One of the interesting facts I do know is we're one of the smallest counties in the state, but I think we're 3rd in population now. So it's kind of a middle class, not a huge amount of, would you say, business industrial kind of thing. There is, obviously there is some, but we're kind of like the bed and breakfast community between Ogden and Salt Lake City.
And what cities fall in Davis County?
You have, starting from the north end, you have South Weaver, Sunset, Clinton, West Point, Layton, Clearfield, Syracuse. You have Farmington, Kaysville, Centerville, Bountiful, West Bountiful, North Salt Lake.
Okay.
Woods Cross.
Woods Cross. I knew I was going to forget one.
And you mentioned that your paramedic licenses cover the majority of Davis County.
Yes.
What areas specifically do you not cover?
Layton City has their own paramedic licensure, and so they are the primary paramedic agency for Layton City proper. And then South Davis Metro Fire encompasses the south end of the county from basically Centerville south, the Centerville-Farmington border south.
Okay. And how do you deploy your paramedics?
We have 8 paramedics on duty at a time. They are in individual trucks, so they're in 8 separate trucks. We run SUVs, Chevy Tahoe Ford Explorers, that we equip with all the paramedic equipment. And we kind of refer to ourselves as being a dynamic as far as our position. What I mean by that is our paramedics aren't set to a fixed location. They are police officers that when they are not handling medical calls, they're out handling police calls, enforcing traffic laws, those kind of things. like I say, we're dynamic, so they're moving about, and what was the Tammy, sorry. But they're able to move from location to location based off the call volume and where they're needed. When a medical does come in, the two closest paramedics are dispatched to that call, and 2 paramedics respond.
Let's talk about the process of dispatch.
Okay.
How does that happen?
Obviously, generally it's generated by a 911 call into the dispatch center. Dispatch center, they have a card system that they follow, which prioritizes the calls, Alpha through Echo, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo. The Charlie, Deltas, and Echoes require the paramedic response. And so if they meet the criteria for that call, then that's when they would dispatch the paramedic units to that.
And what happens when the first paramedic arrives on scene?
He initially starts the assessment of the scene, makes a determination as to the severity of the call, any additional resources if they're not already there available, or whether or not the resources that are responding are necessary.
What do you mean necessary?
Example would be if he gets to the call and it doesn't require paramedics to be there, then he can cancel his partner. He can, at that point in time, if he doesn't need to be there, he can assist the first responder personnel, or he can go to the scene if necessary.
So, Charlie, Delta, Echo, 2 are deployed,
Yes.
but then after assessment, one of those may be called off.
Yes.
And do they arrive at different times?
Yes.
Because you have 1 paramedic per truck, correct?
Right.
And do they arrive at different times?
Yes, they do. Typically. Sometimes they arrive the same.
Sometimes, depending on their location.
Sure.
What happens when there has been an assessment and there is a need for 2 paramedics?
2 paramedics are, I'd say 2 paramedics are automatically dispatched, so you have 2 paramedics there, and if the second paramedic has not arrived yet, the first paramedic can start to render medical aid and attention.
Waiting for the second to
Yes.
arrive. And you mentioned SUVs. Do you transport any patients?
We don't, at the Sheriff's Office, we don't transport anymore. We used to be in the ambulance business and haven't for some years now, but so all the ambulance services are run through fire agencies in Davis County.
So what happens where there's a need for treatment and then you need to transport the patients and the paramedics need to continue to assist?
They would go with that ambulance service that was responsible for that call. So, example, if it was in Sunset City, Sunset has their own ambulance service for their fire. That's a BLS licensed ambulance. So it responds to the call. The paramedics respond if it's necessary for the paramedics to go transport. If it's one paramedic required or 2 paramedics required, they will go on the ambulance to the hospital with that ambulance.
And what are some circumstances where 1 paramedic is required during the transport?
You know, specific is just dependent on the patient care, the severity of the illness or the injury to the patient. If the patient pretty much has been stabilized on the scene and it's a matter of staying with them for the continuity of care through the transport and everything, that could be 1. If during the transport it's a critical patient and they need both paramedics to continue the work as getting the patient stabilized as they're transporting, then you have both paramedics.
And what happens with the sheriff vehicles if both paramedics are needed to transport?
They stay on scene.
What do you mean? They just stay there?
They secure
the
yeah.
cars?
They take their equipment in the ambulance with them, the medical equipment, and they will leave the vehicles on the scene and secure them there on the scene. And
is it the proper term to call them sheriffs?
deputies.
Deputies. Thanks.
Yeah.
Do your deputies ever drive the other ambulance?
No.
So if there's 1 paramedic needed during the transport, the ambulance provider, EMT, etc. may drive,
Yes.
and then your paramedic rides.
Right.
And then if there's 2 needed, then 2 ride,
Yes.
but they don't drive.
No.
Have you ever talked with anyone at BMS about the way you deploy your paramedics?
Yes, I have.
Who have you spoken with?
I've quite regularly talked with Tammy Good. She is our liaison in this county. I see her at least quarterly at our EMS council meetings. I've talked with Mr. Patrick before on occasions. And
Have you been told that it's an acceptable deployment?
yes, I have.
Do you have any opinion as to whether 2 vehicles responding on these paramedic calls increases risk to the community?
Yeah, I will, I concede the fact that anytime any vehicle drives, lights and sirens, there is a inherent risk that goes with that. Speaking from our experience personally, one of the things that I pull my hair out about as a division commander over a bunch of patrol guys is the number of accidents we have. Interesting enough, since I've been division commander, assistant division commander, we haven't had any of those accidents, and I'm not aware of any of those accidents even before that where it was driving lights and sirens. It seems to be the other times that we have accidents. I don't have the explanation for that, but I have theories.
Do your paramedics respond with lights and sirens then on
Yes.
paramedic calls?
Yes, they do.
Do you know if the ambulance also responds lights and sirens?
Yes, they do.
So potentially 3 vehicles could be responding with
Um,
lights and sirens.
In Davis County, that's kind of interesting because depending on which city, the location of the medical, some of the fire agencies will respond even more than that. So you could have as many as you have an ambulance, a fire engine, a chief or a battalion chief, or usually somebody in charge from the fire agencies. Plus, if it's a Charlie or Delta or Echo, it'd be 2 of our paramedics. So.
Okay. Do you have any opinion as to the level of skills that your paramedics have being by themselves in a truck?
I do. I have a strong opinion about that. I believe that, and I've seen this myself in the past, where 2 paramedics together, you can have a very strong paramedic, and a second paramedic kind of rides on the coattails, so to speak. And so one paramedic, is kind of always a dominant and really takes care and does everything. The other paramedic just kind of exists and goes just kind of along for the ride. And the way we do it, I think it makes them sink or swim, because there is times where they might be 2 minutes or 3 minutes on a scene without a partner, and they need to be able to function. They need to be able to perform and show what they're doing, know what they're doing.
Are you aware of how Dixie Ambulance deploys their paramedics?
I wasn't until this issue had come up, but I've been made aware of it since, yes.
What have you been made aware of?
My understanding is that they run a paramedic EMT on each ambulance, and if it meets a Charlie Delta Echo response, that they send a second paramedic from a separate location to that scene.
Do you believe that this approach adheres to the state rules and statutes as you understand them?
Essentially, yes, it does.
Nothing further at this time.
Good morning, Captain Butcher. I haven't met you yet. My name is Amber Metler. I'm one of the attorneys for Gold Cross, and I just have a few questions.
Okay.
You used a couple of times in your testimony the word scene, on scene, to the scene. What's your understanding of the word scene?
My understanding of the word scene is where the incident takes place until you're at the hospital.
Okay. And is it your understanding that the Utah rules require on a paramedic call, require the response of 2 paramedics?
Yes.
And have you looked, or have you analyzed how often on a paramedic call in Davis County you have 2 paramedics arrive at the scene?
I can't give you specific numbers. I can just tell you that, you know, through personal experience, that we always dispatch 2 paramedics. But there is, I don't know what you consider a significant amount of time. I'd say, you know, significant, and to me that meaning maybe 25–35% of the time where the second paramedic is canceled because it's not required to be there.
In these situations where the second paramedic is not canceled, how often does the second paramedic arrive?
Every time.
Every time. And do you know, have you looked at any documents or analyzed Dixie Ambulance's staffing in any respect?
No, I have not.
So do you know how often Dixie Ambulance dispatches 2 paramedics to a Charlie Delta or Echo call?
No, I don't.
And do you know how often 2 paramedics actually arrive at the scene
No.
from Dixie Ambulance? Nothing further.
Yeah, I just had one follow-up.
Yes, sir.
Hey, as I wrote down that you were informed by Paul Patrick that this was an acceptable deployment practice.
Yes.
Do you have anything in writing?
No. I don't personally.
I have a couple of follow-ups. You mentioned that it's your understanding that the scene is where the incident happens to the hospital. Is that correct?
Yes.
Also, it's my understanding that you always dispatch 2 paramedic vehicles on Charlie Delta and Echo calls.
Yes.
But that even though these are Charlie Delta and Echo calls, there's a significant number where the second paramedic is actually canceled after an assessment is done by the first paramedic.
Correct.
That's correct?
All right. Thank you.